Before gospel music, before revival singing, before the American church found its voice, there was a sound already here, refined, structured, unmistakably European. And it came not to the cities, but to the wilderness. From Old World roots to wilderness refinement. In the mid-18th century, no musical tradition in colonial America sounded quite like the Moravians. While most frontier churches relied on simple psalm tunes and untrained voices, Moravian communities arrived with something entirely different, a fully formed European musical culture. They brought trained singers, string ensembles, even orchestral instruments, and, perhaps most importantly, a disciplined approach to music as worship. This is why, by 1740, Moravian music sounded not merely different, but advanced, structured, expressive, and deeply intentional. But that sound did not emerge in the American wilderness. It was carried, quite literally, across the Atlantic. Crates filled with handwritten manuscripts, choral works, instrumental parts, carefully packed in European pietist centers, then transported by ship and finally by wagon into the forests of Pennsylvania and the settlements of North Carolina. What arrived was not just music, but a living tradition. And at the center of that tradition was something uniquely Moravian, the love feast. Not a concert, not a performance, but a sacred gathering where music, community, and devotion became one. Here, high art composition met humble worship. Voices and instruments blended in a setting that was both intimate and profound. And in these moments, in candlelit rooms and simple meeting houses, the Moravians created something the American colonies had never heard before, a sound both refined and deeply spiritual. And from this world, this disciplined, deeply spiritual culture of worship, emerged the men who shaped it. Composers, leaders, musical architects, whose work defined the sound of early American sacred life. These are the names history rarely mentions, but the Church has never stopped hearing. Number 10. Johannes Herbst. Not the most famous, not the most celebrated, but one of the men who made the entire system function. While others composed, Herbst organized. He gathered manuscripts, structured collections, and preserved the music that defined Moravian worship in early America. As a bishop and musical leader, he ensured that what was brought from Europe did not become scattered, but remained usable, accessible, and disciplined. In communities like Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, his work helped shape not just what was sung, but how it was sung. And in doing so, he did something few composers ever achieve. He made the music work. Without Johannes Herbst, the Moravian sound may never have held together. Number 9. Johann Daniel Grimm, a teacher, a composer, and a quiet builder of musical life in early Moravian America. Grimm did not work from a stage, he worked from within the community. In places like Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, he trained singers, developed musicians, and helped shape the daily sound of worship. His compositions were not written for spectacle, but for use. Music meant to be sung, played, and lived in. Through his teaching, the Moravian tradition did something remarkable. It reproduced itself. New voices, new players, new generations, all formed within the same disciplined, intentional approach to music. And in that way, Johann Daniel Grimm helped ensure that the Moravian sound did not fade with one generation, but continued to grow. In the wilderness of early America, far from the workshops of Europe, the Moravians built their own sound. Not just voices, not just manuscripts, but instruments. Organs, carefully constructed with precision and patience. Trombones, forged and fitted for sacred use. Crafted in places where such work should not have been possible. In isolated settlements, Bethlehem, Salem, they recreated the tools of European music by hand. Not for performance, but for worship. And through that work, they proved something remarkable. The Moravian sound was not dependent on place, but on purpose. Number 8. Benjamin Schmidt. A craftsman of sound and a master of musical detail. Where others taught and others organized, Schmidt refined. His work reflects a level of precision that revealed something deeper about Moravian music. It was not casual, it was not improvised, it was intentional. Every line written, every part assigned, every voice placed, with purpose. In a world still forming its musical identity, Schmidt helped elevate worship beyond simplicity into something structured, balanced, and beautifully disciplined. His music was not meant to impress, but to endure. And through that discipline, the Moravian sound became unmistakable. Number 7. John Entis, a composer, a craftsman, and the Moravian whose music crossed oceans. Entis represents something rare in early American sacred music, a direct connection between the New World and the great musical traditions of Europe. Trained within the Moravian system, his work reflects both discipline and depth, but also a broader reach. His compositions traveled, his influence extended, and his music carried the Moravian sound beyond its settlements. Yet even with that reach, his purpose remained unchanged. Not performance, but worship. Structured, intentional, and grounded in faith. Through John Entis, the Moravian tradition did not remain isolated. It began to speak to the wider world. Number 6. Christian Ignatius Latrobe. The composer, the leader, and the bridge between continents. Latrobe carried the Moravian sound beyond the settlements of early America into the broader world of sacred music. His work reflects a refinement that is unmistakably European, yet deeply shaped by the Moravian vision of worship. He published, he organized, and he elevated the music of his tradition for others to hear. Through Latrobe, Moravian music was not hidden, it was presented, structured, intentional, and carefully preserved for a wider audience. And in doing so, he helped ensure that this disciplined, sacred sound would not remain isolated, but would endure. Number 5. Johann Friedrich Peter, a composer of depth, precision, and a quietly remarkable musical imagination. While the American frontier was still learning how to speak, Peter was already writing music with real sophistication. In his work, you hear something rare in early American sacred life, not only order, but artistry. He was among the first to bring true chamber music into the New World, balanced, refined, and beautifully made. Through Johann Friedrich Peter, the Moravian tradition rose into a fuller musical language, one that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the emerging classical style. And he did something extraordinary. He helped place genuinely sophisticated string writing, string quintets of real craft, on the American frontier. Music not reduced to fit the setting, but lifted within it. And in that lifting, the Moravian sound became more than disciplined. It became artistically profound. Number 4. David Moritz Meike, a composer, a director, and one of the first to shape the Moravian sound on American soil. Where others would later refine the tradition, Michael helped establish it. In the earliest Moravian settlements, he organized ensembles, trained musicians, and introduced a level of musical structure the American frontier had never known. Strings, winds, voices, working together in disciplined harmony. His compositions reflect both European craftsmanship and the emerging identity of the New World. But his greatest contribution was not a single piece. It was the foundation he helped build. A system of music, a culture of discipline, and a standard of excellence that others would follow. And because of that work, the Moravian sound in America was not accidental. It was intentional from the very beginning. Number 3. Nikolaus Ludwig von Zinzendorf. Not simply a composer, but the visionary behind it all. Where others would write the music, teach the singers, and build the system, Zinzendorf shaped the heart. His theology, his leadership, and his vision of worship defined what Moravian music would become. This was not music for performance, but for devotion. Not for display, but for community. Through the Moravian love feast, through daily worship, through a life centered on Christ, music became something more, a shared spiritual language. A sound formed not just by skill, but by belief. And because of that vision, the Moravian tradition did not begin with music. It began with purpose. Number 2. Christian Gregor, a composer, a reformer, and the architect of the Moravian sound at its height. If others built the foundation, Gregor refined the system. He standardized hymnody, organized liturgical structure, and brought clarity to how music functioned in worship. This was not casual singing. This was ordered, intentional, theologically aligned music. Through his work, the Moravian Church developed a unified voice, one that could be recognized from one settlement to the next. Choirs, instruments, congregation, all working together within a carefully shaped framework. Gregor did not simply write music, he defined how it was used. And because of that, the Moravian sound reached its most complete form, structured, disciplined, and deeply connected to the life of the Church. Before we hear number 1, there's something you need to understand about the Moravians, and the sound unlike anything else in early American worship. Not the organ, not the choir, but the trombone. A voice both solemn and powerful, set apart for moments of deep meaning. The Moravian trombone choir tradition reaches back to 1733 in Herrnhut, Germany, where alto, tenor, and bass trombones were gathered not for concert halls, but for the life of the church. From church towers, they announced worship. They marked weddings with dignified chorales, and at funerals, they walked into God's acre, letting hymn harmonies speak when words were too small. By the mid-1700s, the tradition had taken root in early American settlements like Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, now counted among the oldest continuing musical traditions in the country. And on Easter morning, while the world is still half dark, those four-part chorales rise into the air, less like performance, more like proclamation. That's why the tradition still endures. Because for the Moravians, the trombone choir isn't background music. It's an announcement. It's a witness. And in the open air, above rooftops, beside graves, or at sunrise, it still sounds like faith made audible. Number 1. Johann Christian Till. Not the most widely known, but one of the clearest voices of the Moravian tradition in America. Where others brought the vision and others built the system, Till embodied it. His music reflects a tradition that had fully taken root, structured, disciplined, and deeply unified. This is not the sound of something forming, but the sound of something established. Choirs, instruments, congregation, working together with clarity and purpose. Through Johann Christian Till, the Moravian sound in America reached a point of completion. Not adapting, not evolving, but functioning exactly as it was intended. And in that moment, the vision became reality. A living tradition, a unified voice, and a sound that could endure. From a quiet movement of faith, in small communities far from the centers of power, came a sound that was anything but small. A sound shaped by purpose, ordered with care, and carried from one generation to the next. Voices, strings, and brass, each one playing a part in something greater than itself. Not for performance, but for worship. Not for recognition, but for devotion. And in that devotion, the Moravians gave the American church something enduring. A sound that could be taught, a sound that could be shared, and a sound that could be remembered. And even now, if you listen closely, you can still hear it.